6th day of August 2013. It's Tuesday. Good evening and welcome. This is KTN Prime. My name is James Smart.
And if you think you know Kiswahili, you have all the reasons to stay with KTN Prime. I'm Linda Butu. Thank you for joining us. But first, let's take a look at the top stories tonight.
No can do why Kathy refused to record a statement with the CID.
Because sometimes I don't understand them.
And so you think you know Kiswahili? Well, ask the people.
Plus, blame it on culture. Family justifies vampire dad's killing of his son.
And if you're at sea on how ferries work, Betty Chalo will show you how.
Well, good evening and welcome once again. Now, lawyer Kathy Kilonzo was today questioned by the Criminal Investigation Department about how she acquired her voter registration slip.
Kathy, however, did not record a statement.
Where lawyers led by James Orengo secured several documents from the police, including the voter acknowledgement slip booklet used to register retired President Mwai Kibaki.
Just over a month after Kathy Kilonzo was locked out of the Makueni Senate race following a ruling by an IEBC tribunal that she was not a registered voter, she arrived for a date with detectives at the Criminal Investigation Department following a complaint by the IEBC asking the CID to investigate how she acquired her voter registration slip. Kathy was accompanied by her lawyers and several court leaders, spent over 2.5 hours with the investigators.
We elected as we're entitled under the Constitution and the law not to record a statement.
Kathy was, however, grilled by the investigators as her team of lawyers also sought information from the police.
90% of the time we were inside the CID headquarters. They were preparing for us the documents that we wanted. They've been photocopied.
Kathy's lawyers were given, among other documents, copies of the acknowledgement slip distribution booklet used to register retired President Mwai Kibaki, in which Kathy's voter registration slip is said to have been plucked from.
And we are finding it strange that the police would be ready and willing to give the documents that they have, the documents that have been handed over to them by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
Kathy on Monday moved to court, seeking orders to compel the IEBC to avail documents it used against her during the tribunal hearings. Her lawyers say they are still seeking documents, among them the BVR register for Langata constituency and a statement under oath of the chain of custody of the voter acknowledgement slip booklet used to register retired President Mwai Kibaki. Rita Tinina, KTN.
And away from Kathy Kilonzo's troubles, it is well over 3 months since the death of the late Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo. The team of pathologists working on the case allocated between 8 to 10 weeks for the release of the full autopsy report. Well, that has not been done yet. More than 3 months later, KTN's Ben Kiteli has an update.
When the autopsy was done in April following the sudden death of Mutula Kilonzo, the promise was clear: to release the final report in between 8 to 10 weeks. That deadline has come and gone, and the truth of what really killed the former minister remains unclear. Sources that did not wish to be quoted owing to the sensitive nature of the case have told KTN that the report, which was expected several weeks ago, is yet to be received at the office of the chief government pathologist. The report, when ready, is first supposed to go to the government chemist, who should hand it over to the police, who in turn would give it to the chief government pathologist. Former chief government pathologist Dr. Geoffrey Mutuma had initially raised questions over the delay in the release of the late Kilonzo's post-mortem report.
The most important thing and what we are looking for is if there's any toxins. Of course, there are other causes of sudden death like rupture of aneurysm.
The current chief government pathologist, Johansen Oduor, then explained the reason for the long wait was because they intended to issue both the preliminary and final toxicology reports. The move to invite a foreign pathologist, Dr. Ian Calder, to lead the autopsy could also explain the delay. The late Mutula Kilonzo's untimely death occurred just days after a commission of inquiry into the helicopter crash that killed Professor George Saitoti. Oro Ojorden and 4 others released its findings, and in that report, the commission accused the government pathologists of what they called professional negligence. Is it possible that the late Kilonzo's final autopsy report is yet to be flown into the country? The wait continues. Ben Kitili, KTN.
Well, now for this next story, you'll have to pay a little bit more attention.
It begins like this. Niliamka alfajiri ya Mungu nikiwa nimechangamka na kukaramka shabiki kibogoyo aliyeota magego na sagego angalau ya kutafuna ubwabwa.
Well, if you think that is difficult, you're in for a big shock, because that is what your child is learning in school these days.
So, is it progress, or are the children being taken on a road to nowhere? KTN's Edith Kimani takes a closer look.
We arrive at the Riara group of schools just in time for the Kiswahili afternoon class. Mr. Anthony Mashira is the teacher on duty. I watch as his pupils construct sentence after sentence in what sounds like a most complex version of Kiswahili. He later tells me his lessons just cover the basics of what is a continuously evolving language.
Even the one I learned as a pupil in school, or even in high school as a student, is very different from, to a greater extent, to the one that I'm teaching now in school.
The lesson continues and the hands keep going up. The pupils in this class appear well versed with the language. Never mind that some have argued proper Kiswahili is a vernacular of a few living in the coastal areas of the country.
Sometimes they find it fun to use, for example, the Sheng, other languages. They're not taking really a lot of time for them to think about what they are saying.
When we get permission to interrupt the class, I ask some of the pupils if the Kiswahili they use at home is similar to what they learn in school.
Mostly, we don't learn difficult words, but if you get a difficult word, there's always an alternative.
The students we've spoken to say that the Kiswahili they learn in school is far too complicated. Some of the words are too difficult for them to remember, let alone use at home. So I grabbed myself a copy of one of the books they're using for their inshas or compositions, and one of the lines, Niliamka alfajiri kangaichi nikiwa mzima hadidi midhili ya ngarange yamvu. I can't even finish this. I don't even know half of the things I've said yet. Complicated is a word Wala bin Wala, a published Kiswahili author, uses to describe what is being taught in schools.
Niliwaona auladi watano.
Use of a difficult language is missing the point, Wala says. You end up losing the meaning of communication. Part of the problem, according to Wala, is a free market that has allowed what he calls rogue writers to sell convoluted works. Complicated as they may be, these are the books learners like these are using, and they have become very good at the complex version of the language. They practice, their teacher tells me before we leave, and so should you, he adds. I leave promising to do just that. Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
Makes you wonder what Kiswahili we were learning in school.
There's a reason why we don't read certain languages. All right, some schools may have been planning to teach a little bit of that unusual Kiswahili during the holidays, but the government said today that holiday tuition remains banned in all schools.
And of course, that story by Edith Kimani brings us to the big question. And tonight,
we deviate from our usual question that
Q in association with Nguvu Cement.
all right, so do you know Kiswahili or not? That story by Edith Kimani forms the basis of our big question. Tonight we're focusing on the Kiswahili that children are being taught in schools. Tonight we deviate from our usual question that requires a yes or no answer. Instead, we seek your comments having watched that story. What do you think about the kind of Kiswahili being taught in classrooms today?
Send us your opinion to the number 8040, or tweet us at KTN Kenya, or at Linda Ogutu at James Smart. Linda and I will sample them during this newscast.
Choose Nguvu for undoubted strength.
Remember the news that KTN brought you about a father who allegedly killed his 2-year-old son and drank his blood in Kisii County?
Well, residents of Nyanchua village today told KTN that the man was simply following tradition, since what happened to the child is what the man's community used to do when a woman came into a marriage with a child from another man.
Well, here's KTN's Catherine Omwantho with that story of the bizarre murder.
Residents of Riamakonda village gathered to mourn a young life cut short. Bifon's mother still visibly shocked by the events that led to her 2-year-old son's death. Last week, she left her husband alone with her son.
Tunaishi tu vizuri naye. Sasa ndiye akaniambia wenda soko nitakuletea mtoto. Sasa wakati nilienda sokoni nikanunulia mtoto nguo. Hizo ndio zilifanya nikapanda kwenda juu. Nikapata amefunga mlango hayuko, ameua mtoto ako chini.
Her husband Nyamohaga Sapati allegedly killed Bifon and drank his blood. The child's grandmother says killing such a child is perfectly in order according to tradition.
Inajua wakuli kama unaenda na mtoto bataua hiyo mtoto. Anataka asaye yake mtoto wake.
Bifon's mother says that her husband was verbally and physically abusive to her and the toddler.
Nini kitu mbaya alikuwa anachapa mtoto. Mtoto akilia anaanza kumchapa yule. Mimi kwanga anasikia anaita mtoto ekerentane.
In English, ekerentane means outcast or unwanted. No matter how abusive Sapati was, Beatrice never thought that he would go as far as killing his stepchild.
Anasema kama unataka mali nitakupatia mali alafu nichukue hiyo mtoto. Hiyo mkuli alikuwa anaambia mimi namna hiyo. Ngamwambia sitaki wapea mimi mali, ninataka uchukue mtoto na hii msichana yangu. Sasa yeye alikuwa anaambia mimi achukue mtoto peke yake. Na mimi nikakataa. Ngamwambia lazima uchukue hiyo mtoto na hii mama yake.
Sapati is said to come from Tanzania and is still at large. Catherine Omwantho, KTN.
Well, prepare to get rid of your analog television set and buy a digital TV set, or get yourself a signal converter as soon as possible. Residents of Nairobi have up to the end of December to do this, while the rest of Kenya will have to follow suit almost immediately. KTN's Philip Keitani tells us why this is urgent.
If you're in Nairobi and you're still watching your TV without a set-top box, or in other words, you're still watching the same TV the same way you did 3 years ago, you may not receive any signal on your TV after December this year. You have 4 months to buy a set-top box or be hooked up to a satellite provider with a decoder. The new migration guidelines released by the Digital Television Committee will see the progress carried out in 3 phases, with Nairobi being the first before the end of this year. This will allow for a smooth transition ahead of the global deadline.
The digital migration will provide the country with digital dividends, which will accommodate other services arising from emerging technological developments. Kenyans will also be able to enjoy a wider choice of programs.
The second phase will see the switch off of the analog signal in major towns, including Mombasa, Kisumu, Malindi, Nyeri, Meru, Ebuya, Nakuru, and Eldoret in March 30th, 2014, with the switch over in all other areas expected by June 30th, 2014.
In 2012, the government waived import duty on set-top boxes to encourage more importation of this important gadget.
Kenya has been on a digital migration mode since 2009, but this move has faced a myriad of challenges, ranging from the lack of adequate information to the public to the lack of required digital conversion boxes, popularly known as the set-top boxes, that activate the display of the channels on your analog TV set. Most households in Kenya have the analog TV set. The set-top box also has the capabilities of interface between devices such as cell phones, memory cards, or internal modems. This will provide viewers with access to more services and information. However, there are few TV sets in the market with an inbuilt conversion capabilities, but their pricing is way too high for most Kenyans, with some going for as high as 3 million shillings.
I also take this opportunity to urge members of the public to only purchase compliant set-top boxes. In order to compliant set-top boxes, in order to enjoy benefits of digital migration.
One, we considered the fact that in the month of December, during the festival mood, people would be able to purchase the set-top boxes as opposed to any other month where they would be involved in school fees issues and so on and so forth.
Initially, Kenya, together with members of the East African community, had set December 2012 as the switch-off date for the digital migration, but only Tanzania succeeded to switch off the analog signal in Dar es Salaam on January 1st, 2013. The Consumer Federation of Kenya last year successfully challenged the government's intention to switch off Nairobi from the analog to digital broadcast by December, but an out-of-court arrangement allowed the process to get back on track. Digital television encourages an increase in the number of programs available, improved quality and accessibility, and creates new media services. It also provides for better television viewing experience with better picture and sound quality. It adds ability for interactive TV and at the same time, flexibility to the broadcaster. Digital transmission allows for better use of available frequency resources, allowing other services to be transmitted over the same airwaves at the same time, thereby freeing the frequencies for other services. Philip Keitan, KTN Prime.
All right, so tomorrow, Kenya marks 15 years since the bomb blast that changed the nation's perception of what exactly the war on terror was. Today marks yet another anniversary for a people who lived under terrorists for well over 2 years. August the 6th, 2011 was the day that AMISOM forces in Mogadishu flushed the Al-Shabaab out of the city. KTN's John Alanamo is just back from Mogadishu and now reports on a city that is slowly taking off the scent of war.
This is the Mogadishu that captures popular imagination. A dark ode to urban warfare. Its facade mangled by bullets and bombs. A bastion to the Al-Shabaab. But that isn't Mogadishu. That was Mogadishu 2 years ago. Meet the new Mogadishu, with buildings shyly climbing into the skyline and businesses buzzing on the city's old boulevards. Expansion is a catchword here.
مستقبلك كله إن أنت كسي بلارين أيام رجينينا وحيالي ودريم كرتا عروض ويني جدي بلار سدو بلارين هاي يو عدل يالو يو عدل هذا الكي مركو ورئيسن وحكو جري إن مستقبلك عن سدان واحد بدن كبدرين.
The residents of this city, once called the Rome of Africa, are far more confident to step out into the streets than they were 2 years ago to this day, the day AMISOM forces routed Al-Shabaab and forced most of the militia group's fighters out of the town. Hope definitely does spring eternal here. But the residents' hope is still a cautious one, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. Already, Mogadishu has seen 3 terror attacks rip buildings to shreds this month, including one at Mogadishu's K4 area, one of the busiest districts in the city. But AMISOM's Deputy Force Commander, Major General Simon Karanja, thinks that the worst just might be over.
These attacks are just but a few attacks that the Al-Shabaab wants to carry out during this period of Ramadan. When Ramadan is over, they will have exhausted their resources and will go back to normal.
It may be a far safer place than it was 2 years ago, but Somalia is far from rid of the Al-Shabaab. Because AMISOM's troops' numbers, just shy of 18,000, are too few to secure the entire southern central block of the country, the Al-Shabaab thrives in their absence. Ethiopia's pullout of the Bakol region in central Somalia also gave the militia group dominance in some pockets of the region. But as far as Mogadishu goes, residents now live under a new flag, a flag that once united all of Somalia and hopes to do so once more.
Walking through Mogadishu is like walking through both a dream and a nightmare because you see both of its pasts. You see the past of a glorious country just on the brink of takeoff to become one of Africa's greatest nations, a country with the longest coastline in Africa. But if you look around you, you also see a past that is more famous or infamous to the world, a past filled with bullet holes, rubble, and ruin. But if you look beyond the ruin, you can see glances of what Somalia could be again. And that is worth every effort that the government makes in fighting to secure this country.
John Alanamu, KTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
All right, so tomorrow, as Kenya marks 15 years since the bomb blasts, we've got a special episode of Perspective that looks at the continuing war to rid Somalia and the region of the Al-Shabaab.
Well, join John Alanamu for that in-depth documentary right after our news tomorrow.
The Big Q, in association with Nguvu Cement.
So, on our big question tonight, we asked you, what do you think about the Kiswahili being taught in classrooms today? Some of you have actually started sending in your opinions. Let me see. Kevin Mganga says, Kiswahili kinachofundishwa shuleni ni cha kuwawezesha wanafunzi kupita mtihani ya kitaifa tu, si ya mawasiliano.
Well, Captain Collins Fanderi on Twitter says, bila shaka hiyo lugha ngumu haina maana yote kwa jamii wala hawa watoto wadogo, si lugha ya fasaha.
Vincent Oro says, hiyo ni Kiswahili mukuti, mimi hapana elewa.
Right, final one from Bill Austin says Swahili is continually growing as opposed to English, which has fully matured.
Choose Nguvu for undoubted strength.
We're getting very funny comments about what you think about the Kiswahili being taught in schools, but stay with us because we will be sampling more of your comments just before we end this bulletin. You're watching KTN Prime, and just ahead.
You're watching KTN Prime, and just ahead, Betty Kialo takes you to the Indian Ocean to see how ferries work. You don't want to miss that.
Welcome back. You're watching KTN Prime. Now, the National Assembly has initiated a process that may lead to the amendment of the report of the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission.
The TJRC Amendment Bill 2013 was formally introduced in Parliament, awaiting debate. There are now fears of mutilation and dilution.
TJRC recommended the prosecution of various high-profile persons for human rights abuses and economic crimes.
The reporters also adversely mentioned President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, but without recommending any action against them.
Also mentioned is former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, sitting and former members of Parliament. The report equally implicates its chairman Bethel Kiplagat, linking him to the Ouko murder, Wagala massacre and illegal acquisition of land.
Kiplagat earlier expressed fear that it might be rejected, claiming the report's findings and subsequent recommendations were not in sync. No more fancy dressing, makeup or jewelry for police officers. With rising concern over flouting of the Kenya Police dress code, the service has directed all police officers to strictly adhere to their uniform as outlined in the law with no exceptions. KTN Sophia Anuna reports.
It is part of that special group referred to as the disciplined forces. And it is discipline they are expected to uphold in their line of work, right down to their dress code. But now police headquarters is coming out to explain a circular that has put the wardrobe of these men and women on the spot.
Sometimes we've had people committing crimes wearing police uniform. And that's why we want to allay fears. A properly uniformed officer will leave no doubt in the minds of Mwananchi.
The circular dated 30th July 2013 from the National Police Service Internal Affairs Unit to all county commanders details what it says are ways in which some officers are flouting the dress code. Some male officers are said to be wearing different colors of socks, bracelets and colored vests, while some female officers have been faulted for having dreadlocks, wearing big earrings and lipstick, items that the circular terms as unprofessional. The circular in part reads, "The above-mentioned items tarnish the good name of the police service. It is a misconduct whose consequences call for stern disciplinary action."
Lazima wavae kulingana na maagizo na vile natakana.
The acting director of the Internal Affairs Unit says strictly keeping to the Kenya police uniform at all times helps make officers easily identifiable and also serves to counter imposters. The directives are to be communicated to all officers by the county commanders, and they are expected to keep in step or else. Sophia Wanuna, KTN.
Well, to some developing story now, it is now emerging that the three companies that bid to provide chartered air services for Deputy President William Ruto's tour of four West African nations under tender have never filed their annual returns with the Registrar of Companies. An Administrative Secretary in the Deputy President's office, Abdul Mosera, told the Public Accounts Committee that the controversial luxury jet was hired for William Ruto from the East Africa Development Company on the President's instruction. It cost 18.5 million shillings.
The companies do not feel under any obligation or under any pressure to file returns. Of all the three companies that participated in this tender, including the firm that ultimately won the tender, none has filed returns. I mean, it's a serious matter.
The legal requirement is that the company must file annual returns every year, and where the company does not file annual returns, there is a penalty. I do agree with the committee that the companies are not in compliance, because in order to be in compliance, they are required to file annual returns every year.
There was that instruction from His Excellency, which was communicated to the deputy communicated to the Chief of Staff, and it came to my level.
And that came from the President to the Deputy President. Was it verbalized or was it in writing? Or you don't know?
I talked to the Chief of Staff and told me that the two principals had discussed.
Here at KTN, we know it as the knowledge segment. From planes to tires, from fine dining to newsrooms, it can only get better.
Well, tonight, how things work is in Mombasa. Betty Kialo reveals just what makes the humongous marine vessel, that is the ferry, glide on the deep ocean waters.
This is a special edition from the coast. Enjoy.
She is strong. Her presence is undoubtedly bold. 1,500 people on her belly. She is massive. Yet, she can float with her 500 ton of body mass. She is one of the most revered and important marine vessels that ever sat on the waters of the ocean. Every day comes with 120 trips on the 500-meter Likoni Channel. 15 minutes and she safely ferries passengers, vehicles and anything with weight to and from the island.
It would be very abnormal for them to capsize.
Ever wondered what keeps this marine vessel on top of the world's waters against all odds? Tonight, we tell you how on How Things Work. Early morning at the ferry, cars, many of them, motorbikes, bicycles, hordes of people, the rush. 5 ferries that cross this channel every day include marine vessel Kwale, Nyayo, Likoni, Kilindini and Harambee. And they carry over 300,000 people and 6,000 vehicles every day. They work 24 hours. Their engines never go off. For the vessels to journey across the channel, they must withstand the tremendous weight. They do that with a little help from those principles of physics, density and buoyancy. The ferries basically displace the equivalent amount of water when they press down on the ocean waters. In resistance, the ocean water pushes it up and keeps it afloat or buoyant. When it comes to this mode of transport, safety comes first. Nothing is left to chance, nothing should go wrong. According to its engineers, it would take more than 48 hours for the ferry to sink, which they say is next to impossible. And engineers here say the flat bottom base of the vessels make capsizing almost unimaginable.
The vessel internally is designed in compartments. If you had a hole in one section, one part of the vessel, that hole will only lead to one compartment. That alone cannot take the vessel down.
The ferry can carry 1,500 people and 20 vehicles on board in one crossing. This may sound like a heavy load, but in retrospect, this load is too little for the ferry. Underneath the surface of the ferry, there are huge tanks of seawater. They are supposed to add weight and make the vessel even heavier so it can submerge to the optimum level.
The ferries are designed and they've got a gross tonnage of 500 tons. That cannot be achieved by the luggage that we carry. You need this ballast to take the ferry deeper in the water to increase this stability.
On board, the ferry has 1,000 life jackets as an emergency precaution.
We have the buoyant apparatus. These are the box type apparatus, which are about 150 in number, and each one of them can save 10 people.
Just like cars, ferries too have engines, 2 big ones, and very thirsty. Taking 52 liters of diesel every hour. Both engines churn enough power to transform a normal car into a supercar.
Accelerated.
Meet the navigators of this marine vessel. They are called coxswains. Theirs is a hard task, making sure that all these people are safe while on board to the point they disembark. He stands here for 8 straight hours. From this vantage point, he has the benefit of watching the movement of the ferry and the people on board.
Just like in a car, this is the wheel. But in a car, you have other pedals. There is this small toggle or pedal here on top of this wheel. So, by pushing it slightly, it engages the engines to give it, now it has given the gear. So, the drive is there, but now what is required is to give it the force, the acceleration. Then I'll push it more further. Then by so doing, you can see the speed is gaining.
This part of the channel is relatively deep. This is because humongous ships pass through this same area. The depth is estimated at 80 to 90 meters. That is from the surface of the water to the bottom of the sea. This depth is almost the length of a football pitch, which stretches to 100 meters. After so many hours on water every day, ferries need service. However, not after the typical 5,000 kilometers. It takes 2 years for them to merit service. Their kind of service is known as dry docking. Dry docking involves getting the ferry off the ocean water onto a dry area where mechanics can access the bottom of the ferry, correcting any malfunctions. Dry docking works like this. Ocean water is let in the dock, after which the ferry is navigated in. Once inside, the water is pumped out of the dock, leaving the ferry on a dry platform, where engineers can work on it. The service can take up to 28 days. When service is over, the water is pumped in again and the ferry is on its way back to the channel. And that is how ferries work. Betty Kyalo, how things work.
So at least you have an idea of how ferries work.
Would you want to explain that in Swahili?
At the end of this bulletin.
Yeah, you're watching KTN Prime. Just ahead.
Parliament approves the controversial VAT bill. What does this mean to the consumer? Coming up shortly on KTN Business Today.
Good evening and thank you all for keeping it KTN. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Time for us to look at business. Parliament has approved the controversial value-added tax bill with minor amendments reinstating basic food items and services to exempt or zero-rated category. The Treasury intends to raise 10 billion shillings through the VAT Act and simplify procedures for paying taxes. The VAT bill reduced the number of goods and services previously exempted or zero-rated from over 400 to about 27. Basic food items will not attract the 16% VAT. These include maize flour, maize seed, rice, wheat flour, ordinary bread, gluten bread, and unleavened bread, infant milk, exercise books and other printed books, sanitary towels, mosquito nets, newspapers and periodicals. Other goods and services that will not attract tax are medical equipment, medicine farm inputs, animal feeds, jet fuel, kerosene and aviation spirit, deceased persons effects, life savings apparatus and passage baggage ships, among other marine vessels. Also in the category are rewards and by sportsmen, capital equipment for generation of electricity and also electric energy. And while looking at more news, Kenya Chamber of Miners has criticized the government over a raft of regulations seeking to bring sanity in the industry. The chamber claims mining minister Najib Balala's actions are out of tune with international best practice. The chamber further noted that the minister went against the spirit of consultations that they had started with the state as part of instituting order in the industry. Apart from revoking licenses issued from January to date, Balala also proposed increases in royalty. Under the deal, rare earth minerals such as niobium and titanium ores royalties would rise to 10% of gross sales value from 3% previously. Royalty rates for other extracted minerals would vary between 1% and 12%.
The proposed royalties are out of sync with the international best practice. As far as we know, no country in the world has royalty rates as proposed. The net impact of the proposals will be like killing the cow that produces the milk.
Senate Committee on Energy, Roads and Transportation has warned clearing and forwarding agents against clearing cargo at the port without sufficient financial backing. The committee claims such practice causes delays and discourages foreign investors. During a tour to monitor operations at the port of Mombasa, the committee was pleased with the measures introduced at the port of Mombasa to clear cargo in Kenya within 5 days. Committee chairman and Baringo Senator Gideon Moi praised the port for its efforts to meet a directive by President Uhuru Kenyatta to reduce the period taken to clear cargo. The committee intimated plans were underway to pass legislation that will require clearing and forwarding agents to be duly registered and a recognized institution. The committee also sought to allay fears that the introduction of a single window system would deny the agents jobs.
Perhaps note that the directives which were given by His Excellency the President, that there should be 5 days from gate of KPA to Malaba has been implemented successfully, and now it is 4.8 days. We're very interested in encouraging KPA that they must look beyond our borders, which constitute, of course, 30% of the trade which comes through. We want it to go even higher than 30 to 40% and through to our neighboring countries. We want to be the port of choice.
Barclays Bank of Kenya's half-year pre-tax profit fell 13% to 5.5 billion shillings, weakened by a one-off payment for early retirement costs. On the other hand, National Bank of Kenya pre-tax profit edged up 3.5% in the first 6 months of 2013, but its numbers still lag behind other lenders. Michael Karanja has the details.
National Bank has seen its half-year profits edge upwards, reporting a 3.5% rise in pre-tax profits to 953.3 million shillings. The growth in the first 6 months is largely driven by increased lending and an improvement in the quality of its loan book. During the period, the bank registered a 38% decline in interest expenses, which stood at 1.25 billion shillings, down from 2 billion in 2012. Net interest income rose 12% to 2.5 billion shillings, while loans and advances stood at 27.8 billion shillings during the period. To keep pace with the fast-changing banking sector, National Bank plans to automate its systems as well as stem the headcount increase for the lender.
We also have rejigged our technology so that we don't spend as much as we were spending before, by actually consolidating quite a few of those. We're also leveraging that same technology to make sure that we automate things that were being done in the old way, despite investing huge sums of money in technology.
At the same time, Barclays Bank saw its profits fall to 5.5 billion shillings. The results factored in a one-off restructuring cost of 788 million shillings following a voluntary retirement program initiated during the first 6 months. Net interest income grew 3% to 9.2 billion shillings, while customer deposits grew by 13% to 138 billion shillings. The bank was also able to reduce its non-performing loans by 13% to 3.9 billion shillings.
We now have a very strong local franchise, regional franchise, as well as global franchise. And we believe that will give us the opportunities to differentiate ourselves from our competition.
Data from the central bank shows commercial banks' profit jumped 15.6% to 61.5 billion shillings in the first half of the year, an indication of strong performance to be reported by banks in the coming days. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
And well, that's it that we had on this edition of KTN Business Today. But to wind up, we'll take a look at how the Kenya shilling performed against other currencies, and also the Nairobi Securities Exchange, how those companies performed. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Good evening.
All right, time now for KTN Sports Today. I am Nicholas Mudimba. The national athletics team is currently in Dubai en route to Moscow. The team's flight from Nairobi was delayed on Monday following fuel pump glitches at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The team is set to depart Dubai tomorrow morning for Moscow. However, the team left without Olympic and world 3,000-meter steeplechase champion Ezekiel Kimboi, who is believed to be in Eldoret and will link up with the team at the end of the week.
When the first batch of the Kenyan team checked in at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport Monday afternoon, world and Olympic 3,000 meters steeplechase champion Ezekiel Kimboi was not part of the 43 athletes and 13 officials that later traveled to Moscow through Dubai for the 14th World Athletics Championships Tuesday morning. Coaches at the airport didn't want to be drawn into discussing Kimboi's whereabouts, but according to his closest friends in the camp who didn't want to appear on camera, Kimboi had expressed his doubts over the weather conditions in Moscow and opted to stay longer in Kenya and enjoy the high altitude advantage. Their delay will mean that they will arrive in Moscow later than was earlier scheduled, and thus the athletes whose events are scheduled for the opening day will now have few hours familiarizing the weather in Moscow.
Kwa sasa itakuwa imeharibu siku ya kesho kwa sababu tungefika kesho Moscow saa 8. So unaona tungekuwa na rest ya kesho kutwa tungeanza mazoezi yetu huko. So imeharibu sio siku moja sasa.
Fuel pump hitches at the Jomo Kenyatta Airport Monday evening delayed their travel. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
And still in matters athletics, Simon Cherono is the latest millionaire in town. Cherono, who won 3 gold medals in the just concluded Olympic Games in Sofia, Bulgaria, will receive his fat check from sponsor Safaricom. The Kenyans brought home 17 medals, 6 of them gold in total. The mobile phone service provider will pay out 10.8 million shillings for the 17 medals. After a splendid performance at the 22nd Summer Olympic Games in Sofia, Bulgaria, the victorious Kenyan team, which finished second globally, arrived back home in the country on Tuesday morning. In total, the team won 17 medals. They were received by Safaricom officials. The mobile service provider had pledged to pay 1 million shillings to gold medal winners. Simon Cherono will be the single biggest beneficiary after winning 3 gold medals in the 1,500 meters, 10,000 meters and 5,000 meters races.
I feel great. I feel great. I'm so happy. I'm going to help my family. I'm going to support my people. They are poor. I'm going to help them now that I've gotten the 3 medals, and also go to church and give the 10%.
I've never been prouder to be associated with these guys as I am this morning. You know, we sponsored the Olympics, then we sponsored the Paralympics, and then we sponsored the deaf athletes. And actually, this one is costing us more money than any of the others, because these guys have come back with more medals than the other 2 sets of Olympians.
Daniel Kiptum bagged silver medals in the 5,000 meters and 10,000 meters. While Beryl Atieno surprised many by scooping a gold medal in the 200 meters race.
Me and Troy teacher and David, we are running together as a team. But when we are nearing to finish, I left them when I finished. And then I could see people were coming hours later when I finished my race. It was tough.
Silver medalists will earn 600,000 shillings, while bronze medalists will be 300,000 shillings richer.
We budgeted for it. We budgeted for it. What we did not expect, we didn't expect 3 medals. We didn't expect a world record being broken. And, it's a really proud moment for us at Safaricom today.
The team surpassed the 2009 Deaflympics team performance in Taipei that won 7 medals, 4 gold, 2 silver and a bronze medal.
Edith Kimani did a very interesting story on the kind of Kiswahili being taught in schools today, the kind that most of you would not even understand. We asked your thoughts on the kind of Kiswahili being taught in primary schools these days, and we were not looking for a yes or no, we just wanted your opinion. And let me see, Madadi Boga from Mukuda says, the Kiswahili taught these days is far too complicated. As a parent from the coast, I find it difficult to correct my daughter's Insha, although I passed my Kiswahili with a distinction in my O-levels in 1987.
Well, I'm a teacher, but I can't pass near Kiswahili classes. I sincerely get nothing. That's Celine Sidindi.
Tabitha Nairobi says, it's too complicated to comprehend. One wonders if it's meant for communication or something else.
Well, this is meant for you, leader. Someone says, although you seems you're good in Kiswahili, Chashaban bin Robert, kusadikika, kufirikika, etc. It should be at 3rd and 4th form and not primary school level. That's from Washington.
No, finally, Smart, a very interesting one from Kenneth Ambani says, twafunzwa Kiswahili sanifu shuleni ila hatu kidhamini nyumbani wala mitaani. Tumezipa lugha za kigeni kipaumbele.
Choose nguvu for undoubted strength.
That is where we leave it. Thank you so much for watching KTN Prime. Hope your Kiswahili gets better with time. I'm Linda. Go to sleep well.
All right, kutoka KTN Prime News na watakia usiku mwema sio na bugudha.
What is bugudha?
Out of fashion. Have a good night. My name is James Smart. James Smart. See you tomorrow.